If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah blah blah.
Sending out good vibes.
The blah blah blah.
Good vibes.
Blah
Good vibes.
the blah blah blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
You might ought to explain. This is Richard Floyd McCoy III talking. This is DB Cooper's son that has the microphone here. That's who's actually talking here. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerican show. We are talking with Dan Gryder this week. We're just fresh back from our trip to the East Coast. Well, pretty much the East Coast. We ended up on the East Coast.
It was the East Coast, yeah.
That's right. We were right on the water there for lunch. Where you had, what did you have? What did you have for lunch?
I can't remember. Hush balls or something? Hush puppies?
Graham Hush Puppy Dunlop.
Yeah, well, I tried different things, you know. I mean, why have fish and chips when you can have hush puppies? We don't have hush puppies out here.
Fish and chips.
So I was like grits and, I was trying to eat the Eastern food,
It was a full seafood menu.
Well, I grew up in Vancouver. I mean, I don't need seafood.
Vancouver seafood?
Yeah.
Is it any good?
Yeah, of course. It's the best.
Yeah, there's no way it's the best. It's definitely not the best. It's in that little channel there. Is it? I don't know. I was disappointed with the Seattle seafood scene.
Huh.
But once you get halfway down the Oregon coast, it starts to get pretty good.
That's interesting. But I do want to mention, because Dan Gryder will probably be listening to some of this. This is a fantastic little show, a fantastic preview of the DB Cooper. It's like sort of the solving of the DB Cooper case. And we're going to come out with a 2.5 hour or so, maybe more, interview with the son, Rick McCoy himself. But this is just like Dan, because Dan was there this weekend. He's quite a character.
Character.
Pretty amazing guy. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about his YouTube channel a little bit here, but I just want everybody to know this is a little intro we do before the episode comes out. We go over some housekeeping and stuff. We got some stuff to talk to the listeners about. Sometimes we review listener emails and feedback and quotes and operation projects and project operations, but this will be a little bit of a different intro. But this is a great preview of the investigating that Dan's done for decades on DB Cooper and why he thinks it's that we were with the son of DB Cooper, Rick McCoy, the son of Richard Floyd McCoy Junior. And he's a character.
To say the least.
So his video channel, so this episode doesn't even get into Dan's YouTube channel. So I want to mention it here because he's got quite the interesting. I listened to one of his shows on the way back from Spokane yesterday.
Oh,
and
boy.
He was arguing with a pilot. It was pretty funny. He was calling out this pilot. That they were arguing back and forth and they knew each other, but man, he was hard on the guy. And it's a bunch of terms that I won't get into because it's specific to small craft general aviation. So Dan's channel is called Probable Cause. And every Sunday, he's started this thing a couple months ago where every Sunday he goes through the fatalities of the small aircraft general aviation from the previous week. And he analyzes it and then he deletes the episodes 6 days later. And his subscribers have jumped up quite a bit. He's doing quite well on the channel, but he's trying some different tactics on YouTube there. It's pretty interesting.
Why is he deleting it?
Well, because then people will subscribe and watch his watch minutes will go up. But it's an interesting theory. I don't know if it seems to be working for him. I mean, I think you're going to miss out the opportunity of longer term virality with some of those videos. Like if he did a great video and didn't delete it, maybe it would double or triple. But I think he's watching his like watch minutes or his watch time, and he's watching the bell curve. It's not a bell curve. It's like just an incline. And it plateaus after a few days, right? It goes up, and then it plateaus after a few days. So then he figures, like, I'm going to delete that, and then people will subscribe because every Sunday they want to see the news of the previous week and the fatalities. And he says most of these are human error, like the large percentage are human error. But I was thinking, Adam, what?
Of course they are. Just like car accidents.
And I was kind of asking him, so the last couple of years, is there like a little bit more, is there more accidents? Like, is there some weird, funny stuff going on with the pilots? He says, well, there's definitely an increase in, I mean, I didn't get into the jab and stuff with him. I probably should have, but I just left it at like a vague question. But he says, there's definitely more accidents that are unexplained. There's a bunch of accidents that are unexplained. But you know how No Agenda, and we always joke around about like being suicided, you stay away from hot tubs, bench presses, and small aircraft or whatever. So I was going to ask him, I should have asked him, like, are the mechanical failures in a different category with sort of semi-famous people or weird cases where, because I think we were just talking to a guest today on another show, and they mentioned one of the senators was killed in a small aircraft. I mean, you do hear quite a few of those like high profile deaths are famous people,
It's
so
still
I did ask
mostly
him about
human error for sure.
Yeah, he said, yeah. And I mean, honestly, I think Adam Curry would be interested. Adam Curry's getting his license for his Cirrus. I guess I don't know if he's updating his pilot's license or whatever, but he's getting into the small aircraft. I mean, what a way. This is what we should do for traveling in the States. I mean, there should be like an app, like what's the Uber? Like an Uber app for small aircraft.
You buy taking small aircraft. Do you know how fucking long it would take to get to fucking Charlotte on a small aircraft?
You don't go all the way across the country, but what if it's just like small jaunts where you have an app for somebody and you share you buy into an aircraft and you share and you go around and you share the aircraft and you fly for probably not much more than it would be, but you get this.
You can rent one for $180 an hour.
That's not bad.
I'll take my truck. I mean, it's so like
I'm just thinking with the
so
mandates,
much like
dude. For
I was talking to my buddy Brad
Canada.
about flying me down to Spokane, and he's like, "Yeah, it's probably gonna take like 6 hours." And I was like, "Well, fuck, I'll just drive, man. Fuck it."
Really? Is it that? Yeah, because your buddy has a.
It was long enough that I was like, "Well, this," and we were gonna have to stop for gas halfway, and I was like, "Well, this is just fucking and all this paperwork to get over the border," and I was just like, "This is fucking ridiculous. I'm just gonna fucking." Plus, it's gonna cost me like $3,000 in a plane rental instead of just taking my truck. I was just like, if it was like 3 hours, that'd be something. Even 3 hours a bit much, but not terrible.
What would it have taken you to drive? Like it was 6 hours to fly and 12 to drive or something?
It's fucking 10 to drive.
Oh, so yeah.
It's like 60%.
It's not worth it, yeah.
Man, you're just like going a little faster than the cars on the ground. You're just like... Your real advantage is that you're just going straight.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're going a little faster. I don't know what the fucking high-end speed of it.
So,
if you had a little jet, it'd be cool. But
yeah, exactly. Something a little faster. So check out Dan's Probable Cause YouTube channel. He's got a pretty good, and he's also got, well, we got to talk about the documentary that he put out. It's pretty long, couple hours long, but it's Deep Family Secrets Part 1 is the one that sort of I watched before we met with Rick McCoy. And of course, Brandon Powell was there as well. Actually, Brandon Powell and Rick McCoy are on this episode a little bit, but mainly it's Dan. But
so
what?
The cruise speed is of a Cessna 172 is 226 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
So it's like, like 80 kilometers an hour more than I'm driving. It would be cool.
Yeah. I know. It would be a good option. Especially
but dude, I just had to sit in that plane for like 7 hours. I couldn't imagine sitting in it for like, like all day. Like, oh, we're going down for fuel again. And he probably just like loud too. If you had a
Gotta be
sweet
better
jet,
than
though.
where I was sitting in between two big guys. Like we were all of our shoulders were touching each other, and the three tiny seats in the whatever it was, 767 or whatever. It was gross when you get stuck between two big guys.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, our
I don't know
legs are
how
touching.
the fuck
Like, not that I care about touching, but
I
like
don't even
my
know
legs,
how
I
some of
can't
those
hold my
motherfuckers
legs
get in the
closed.
seats. I was like,
What?
this lady got out of the thing at Newark today. And I was like, how the fuck did you fit in that seat?
Oh, Darren.
I'm just saying, I don't know how the fuck I could not imagine having to try and, because the plane's fucking full, dude. Full.
Oh yeah, they're all full now. They're so overbooked that all the planes are full. They're jammed.
And I'm fucking jammed. And this lady's like for me, man. I'm just saying. And I'm like, how the fuck do you even fit in that seat? I couldn't imagine. You just wed yourself in there?
Oh boy. He was trying to get us canceled.
What? What? I'm just saying.
Trying to get us. What?
Well, you can't get
What?
canceled just for asking
What?
how fat people fit in the airplane seats.
You're fat shaming. People are going to accuse you of fat shaming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Well, maybe I'm not because this is going to get us
Well, I
canceled.
shouldn't have to pay as much money for my plane ticket.
Oh my God. This is where we're going.
A little
So-
too close to home, Dunlop.
Well, yeah, a little bit, I guess. Yeah, I got to lose some fucking pounds.
You should get on that.
Speaking
I
of,
agree.
I could lose about 22 pounds, which is the weight of the money that Dan Gryder jumped out of the plane,
40.
mimicking the DB Cooper jump, and he couldn't
Dropped
hold
it.
on to the
He dropped
cash.
it. He dropped it. I bet I
Couldn't
could hold
on
it.
to it. I buy like holy no, dude. He says you start tumbling so fast. He was like worried he's gonna black out. He's like,
gotta
I
get-
gotta let go of some of this. I gotta let go of this money now.
James Nation, we're going to do some tests.
Yeah, we want to hear from James Nation.
No, we want to come and try and jump out of a plane with
Oh my
22
God.
pounds. Let's see if James Nation can do it.
Yeah, 10,000 feet in
Yeah,
the dark and raining from a 727.
it wasn't raining.
It was raining.
It wasn't
was just
fucking
not
raining.
Storming.
It wasn't raining.
Storming.
It was
still
clear.
raining.
It was clear. It
Are
was
you
clear.
Sure? I think it was.
I'm
I
sure.
think it was overcast.
I'm sure.
I think it was
No,
overcast
nope.
and raining a bit.
was overcast.
Anyways, I mean, look at us. We don't even know what's
It was
going on.
clear. I'm telling you, I know. Not look at us.
Anyways, it was fun to have Dan there with us this weekend to go over some stuff. I mean, it's a fascinating case. Fascinating because it's also not really what the mainstream community that's researching all these armchair sleuths that are all writing these books and researching, and they have their pet cases and stuff. They passed over this one because the FBI said it wasn't their guy. The FBI, for many reasons, other reasons, because he didn't look the same, was a little older, and for other reasons, the FBI passed it over. So we dig into this. It's coming out in a few weeks after Dan's part 2, which will be coming out in a few weeks. We'll have this long form audio conversation with Rick McCoy and Brandon Powell coming out afterwards. So this is kind of like a preview of that.
Richard Floyd McCoy III.
Yeah, I like Rick McCoy because I don't know. Like, there's some weird little synchronicities happening with this too. Did I tell you playing hockey?
No one cares. No one
Nintendo
cares.
hockey
No
in the
one
late
cares.
'80s.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
We used to say Rick McCoy.
No one cares.
Rick McCoy. Like, all of us used to chant Rick McCoy, and then I end up.
You're saying that
Rick
all
McCoy.
weekend. I mean, no one cares.
And Brandon Brandon cared, and Brandon and Mike were with us with the same birthday on November 24th, the anniversary of DB's jump. Synchronicities abound.
That is not a synchronicity. The
Oh,
Rick
dude,
McCoy,
it is because-
your little fucking
Well, that-
video
I'm
game
not
fucking
saying that one.
mispronunciation.
I'm not saying that one. It's just weird, dude. It's like I was precogging the best interview that we've done.
No, you were just like mishearing something because of a bad video game. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, you do know? You remember that one? That had the little.
We
grits
didn't think
'cause
it said Rick McCoy though. We thought it was something else.
Yeah, that's weird.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't Rick McCoy.
Well, we all thought it said Rick McCoy. That's what we said it said.
I remember there's been some great mispronunciations back before the internet when you just had to like guess what the lyrics of songs were and stuff like that. Then you hear your buddy singing something, you're like, what the fuck do you say? Yeah. Good time. So PayPal.
Oh boy.
You know, it's a can of worms because I don't, like
PayPal's
like
against
a little
can of
social
worms.
credity.
Please don't cancel. I mean, what do we ask? I mean, we don't. We
Well,
ask
I'm
people
not going
to
to,
cancel
I
their
can't tell you.
PayPals?
I mean,
you
I
know,
just
like,
don't want to lose a bunch of support here.
Well, we already
my
lost a
major-
bunch of
we
support
lost a
because
ton
of
of
PayPal.
support.
We should try and sue PayPal for this fiasco that we're in. I mean, Tim Pool talked about it. He lost a bunch of support, even though a lot of people went to Parallel Economy. I don't know if you
What's
watched that
Parallel
video I
Economy?
sent you, but I guess you didn't watch that video I sent you then.
What video you sent me?
Oh my God.
When did you send it to me?
I texted it to you and Brandon yesterday.
Yesterday. What the fuck do you think I've been doing? I was sitting around watching videos.
You were sitting on a plane. You could have watched it for like
On a
10 times
plane.
over.
I don't have data on the plane.
Oh my
Phone's in
God.
airplane mode.
Anyways, he was saying that he's lost a lot as well. Like, and he thinks PayPal should be responsible for this because imagine how many he tried to switch people over earlier, but still a lot of people stayed with PayPal. And he lost a bundle. He lost a bundle, and we've already lost a bundle too. And we don't have a bundle to lose. We're barely scratching it by it as it is.
Oh yeah, we lost a lot.
So what do we
Maybe
do? What do we
15%,
ask? What
maybe
do we say?
10 or
I mean, there is
15%.
Patreon. There is Patreon on there too, right? I mean, on a regular
There's
Grimerican,
Stripe,
there's
too.
Patreon and Stripe.
Both.
But Parallel Economy is a censor-resistant ecosystem. But honestly, they don't say anything about the country. And my sense is that it's only a U.S. thing. I mean, there's nothing in the FAQs.
I've never heard about it. Never heard of it.
It's Dan Bongino's Rumble thing to basically compete with PayPal.
But it has to be on Rumble.
No. It's just a separate payment processing.
Well, there's Stripe on there right now and Patreon. So if you cancel your PayPal, if you could like switch it to something else, that would be great. Because I mean, this is probably more out of the gate than even when we started talking Trump and stuff like that. Years ago, that cost us. This is worse than that. We're probably 10 to 15% of our subscriptions gone.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a lot of those come back on Stripe. So, maybe you guys just want out. I don't know. Let us know. We don't know if you still want us to
Do we
the show.
know if PayPal's not doing some of this themselves like they used to do a little bit?
I can't see it.
No.
That'd be a pretty big coincidence.
I mean, they're trying to back off it as well, but I think it was an internal.
No backing off of that.
There's a whistleblower talking about how somebody within the company actually put this forward and may not have had the appropriate approvals. And I don't know if that's true or not yet, but it's getting
Don't matter now.
Rabbit hole's getting a little deep. No, I know that's the thing. It doesn't really matter now.
Switch to Stripe, please.
So that's what we're asking people to do right now. Just switch to Stripe.
Yeah, unless you have a better idea.
That works for Grimerica Outlawed or other podcasts as well.
Yeah, we'll address that over there.
Okay. I do want to mention if somebody emailed me about whether it's an RSS feed, and yes, Grimerica Outlawed is a separate podcast, a separate RSS feed that you can copy and paste into your podcast player after you get your sign up and plug in your password and your username, and you take that RSS feed from the support page and plug it into your player. Manually add that podcast. So I can't respond because whoever emailed you didn't put the email in. I thought our website guy fixed that, but he didn't put the email in. He didn't change that to be mandatory to put your email in. So if you don't put your email in your contact form, then we have no way to reach back to you. Right?
Pretty much. Dun, 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 dun.
Until it gets until
he must be listening to the
in.
free Outlawed. We'll just mention it over there.
Yeah, for sure. But I want to mention it here as well, just because we do have a separate show completely with some amazing episodes coming out.
Totally.
So, anything else on the support PayPal front?
No, that's.
I think Patreon only works with one-time donations. Actually, for the Grimerican show.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Oh, it definitely doesn't.
It's the opposite. Maybe you can do one-time donations on Patreon now, though. But you can definitely do. It's all about monthlies. Are you checking because you don't believe me?
I am checking. Yeah.
This is fun. This will be fun.
Yeah, this is good audio. Right? Okay. Yeah, I can't remember what it was. I'm not going to go through it all now. But yeah, I did check it. There is a difference between donating monthly and one-time donation.
Yeah, I don't think you can do a one-time donation on Patreon.
Maybe that's what it is.
But you can on Stripe. For sure.
It's right on.
You got something else? Wasn't there something else you wanted? An email?
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to talk about the feedback from last episode? And
Sure.
you might like it. It's pretty negative against me. I took a lot of shit from that episode that you weren't a part of.
What? Which one? Last Grimerican episode?
The Greg Paul freedom episode. People aren't buying his freedom.
What? I gotta see this though.
And I'm telling you, I had a hard time with it too. But I mean, I got called out on not pushing back enough and stuff, right? I mean,
where was I?
You were. There was one of those. Remember, it was that day that you couldn't be there. So can I read some feedback? I got a couple.
Yeah.
This isn't because I know it was like suspect because not suspect, but because I got it from multiple people. This is from Brandon Pundai, and I might I might actually get him and somebody else on the show if I can, but. After listening to the episode with Greg Paul, he really left you hanging with explaining what is happening with government, corporate policy, civil, legal, law, natural law, our rights, contracts, trusts, and constitutions. It goes really deep in about 5,000 different directions, but it really boils down to us giving the corporation jurisdiction. Even if we are considered employees, we still maintain our natural rights, which are obvious to each one of us. No jab, no mask, no tax, unless necessary for infrastructure. As he said, there are many ways, but one must be willing to maintain the knowledge to do so. I've studied just about 5 different ways so far, but it seems that affidavits are the truth, and notice to proper federal, state, and local government people by certified mail with notary provide the proof of witness. These notices and affidavits you send to them will force them to witness to the natural rights and facts stated in the notice affidavit. So he said, I can give you more info, blah, blah, blah. This info needs to get out everywhere, and every country is set up the same way. It's simple in a way, but requires a lot of learning and info. So, yeah, I'm going to get back to him. And then I got some other feedback. No, his was okay, but he did say he left us hanging. But one guy said, and I found this in junk. He said,
"Computer knew to keep
one
it
of
away
them
from you."
Greg Paul was controlled opposition. It doesn't matter about fraud. If you make an agreement, you have to follow through. And poor me, I lost my house, but it gave me a great idea. I will just keep one foot in each system. How trite. You gave no pushback while he shoveled shit on your listeners. What the fuck? So I said, thanks for the feedback. And then I kind of asked about the controlled op, and I asked what his name, because he didn't even introduce himself. And then he says, yeah. So he gives me his name. Okay. Well, it could have been spam or something. You get so much crap, right?
That was not spam, brother. Nice try. Spam.
So he replies back. He says, I've studied the sovereignty movement for 15 plus years. We are sovereign because we are children of God, period. Thanks for pushing back a little with, what about when your government is killing you? which he had no specific answer to. Best case is he is stupid, greedy, and you wasted your time. Worst case, he is controlled op and you were duped. I don't use that phrase lightly. Full disclosure, I could only stomach the first 2/3 of podcast. Controlled op warning signs. No talk of trusts as a tool to act in the system. No talk of inalienable rights that come from God. No talk of common law, courts, and decisions, or the basic phrase, do no harm, which is the foundation of English law and Western medicine. Lots of rambling with no concrete suggestions except pay for my webinar. He was full of bullshit, unclear, confusing, and sounded more like a Matrix agent counseling one to jack back in. You don't need to exit the system. Exact quote from Greg. You made an agreement. That is a thing. You made that your law, forgetting the fact that the loan is fraudulent. That's another quote. You still want a bank account. That's another quote. If you decide to take title as X, you are responsible for the outcome, ignoring fraud, compulsion, necessity, etc. You have an obligation to pay taxes. And he then says, I am liable for my government actions. What the actual fuck? Nefarious actors are on us. Do I need to go on? Any law beyond the word of 12 is law, is mischief. The government of man, though misguided, are for the benefit of man, period. Do the right thing and delete the episode.
Holy moly.
If you want to... If you want to,
what did you do?
If you want to interview someone, interview your fellow Canadian by murder by decree, at Murder by Decree. He will have lots to say about sovereignty and what to do when your government tries to kill you.
Didn't we have him on a couple times?
Sorry, that's the one that went through. Yeah, we did have him on. He's talking about Kevin Annette, murderbydecree.com. We've had, and I replied saying, yeah, we've had Kevin on.
And you're telling me I'm going to get the show canceled.
So then I replied again, and he says, I finished the episode, and I will say that he had a fair point about live in no controversy, but that is like taking the tiger to tea. It sounds nice, but is completely naive. Okay, so here's the good part.
That wasn't the good part.
It's all fine and dandy to have people on to talk about happy thoughts and ancient aliens, but you have to have Darren on with you if you're talking about rubber meets the road stuff like sovereignty and law. You just did not push back on his bullshit hard enough. And I'm not rushing to controlled op label easily. He doesn't even need to know he is controlled op to be controlled op. The government loves hippy dippy, make no waves, pseudo sovereign types like Greg. My grade for Greg: A for happy thoughts, F for knowledge, F for courage. Anyways, thanks for getting back to me. All the best. My advice is channel your inner asshole more. So I said, fuck my inner asshole.
Whoa.
Hey?
Literally?
How's that channeling it? Eh?
Literally? That's what you said?
I did, yeah.
You said fuck.
Nothing.
You said fuck my inner asshole.
Well, I thought that was a good pun on channeling my inner asshole, right? Come back.
Oh, man. Did you have any comments in there anywhere? Or did they just fuck my inner asshole? Gotta be a better way to say that.
Yeah.
All right. What else you got?
No, but I mean, so, and then there's other guys suggesting somebody else to have on, Amanda somebody too. I'll have to look into that as well. There's a bunch of people, but this whole thing is just hard for me. It's hard to wrap my head around this freedom stuff, you know?
I have to listen to that
and
episode.
Greg Paul was what do I call it? Not sponsored, but vouched for by some pretty famous people in the alternative community, like Kelly Brogan and Alex Zek, I think. One of the Zeks, Danny Zek or Alex Zek. You know, and it was more of like a simplifying it in a spiritual way. So I thought, you know what? Okay, I know somebody and that suggested Greg, and I watched sort of a couple videos where he was being, and I thought, well, okay, let's try this one. So anyways, I told him I'm not fucking deleting it. And the controlled op thing, I have a real hard time. We got to do an episode on controlled op. It's being thrown around way too much now.
In a few years.
Everything is controlled op.
This is the 2022. It's the year of people telling you to delete episodes.
Yeah.
Well, only a few months left. It'll be 2023.
So all I got left is a quote.
I don't have the jingles because you have the chords.
Okay, so sorry, we're just returning from trips, and it's we're not too organized here. But so
Literally.
try and guess who said this.
Fuck my
Neither
inner
dr-
asshole. Grab that
What?
up.
Neither drilling. I suck dick for cock.
Man, explicit content.
Sorry, Dan. This is not the best.
Sorry, Dad.
Neither drilling more oil nor the current green technologies can solve either the environment or energy crisis. But the long suppressed 0-point new energy technologies can solve both in one generation.
Elon Musk.
Close. I'll give you another hint. It's one of our favorites.
One of our favorites.
Yeah, in different ways.
Different way.
You get the name wrong all the time.
Richard Gere.
Yeah. Yeah, Stephen Greer.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he's been sending out a lot of. He's
Is
been
this
really
like a
pushing
little-
back on
is
this
this a little
energy
poke
thing.
to- is
He's
this a
going
little
down the energy
inside
thing.
joke
What?
to Brandon Powell.
Neither drilling more oil.
We should get what's his name on the show. Who is he?
It should say neither drilling more black oil nor the.
Oh boy.
Who should we get on the show?
I forget his name. I forget who is the guy who can collaborate that story.
Corroborate? No, we can't say the name now.
Corroborate?
Yeah, you can't.
Why not? We didn't say anything.
Brooks Agnew.
Yeah. What's he
I know,
about?
he's like on the top of my list. I'd
All
love
right,
to.
we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Make it happen. We'll spring it on him in plus. At least we'll get Powell to sign up. All right, guys. Enjoy the chat with Dan Gryder.
All right, we got a special episode for you tonight. Extra special. We're in Virginia. We got Dan Gryder here from Probable Cause YouTube channel. Got our buddy Brandon Powell with us and Rick McCoy. And we're talking about the DB Cooper case. And we're here with Dan and Rick and Brandon doing some investigations. And we're going to get into this a little bit. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. So who is DB Cooper? I mean, what is this whole thing about? You tell me what.
I'll tell you from like a real layman's point of view what I think it is, right? He's a hero or an anti-hero, depending on who you talk to, a villain or a hero. And he hijacked a plane, stole some money, and got away with it.
How long ago are we talking about? I mean, when did this whole thing come down?
Like 50 years?
50?
51?
We're still talking about a story that's 50 years old? What kind of a podcast is this?
We go into ancient history, dude.
Do
We're
you?
talking 13, 15,000 years, 60,000. This is a newer thing.
This is new, but no. Sorry, I got excited. I did exactly what I was told not to do.
Right away.
Yeah, right away, right out of the
So do
gate.
you think it's a worthy story? DB Cooper? Has anybody ever heard of him? I mean, is this a thing?
I think it's absolutely a worthy story.
Yeah, I do too. I started following this thing like 20 years ago, and I'm a skydiver and a pilot, so this really took my interest a long time ago. But I think a lot of America has heard the name D.B. Cooper, but there's a whole lot of misconception about who he was or how it happened or what really went down that night. And so that's the trail that I went down years ago. And it's been a long and winding trail. And I think a lot has changed in the last several years on this thing, which has made it, I think for your listeners, it was a fascinating story before, but wait till you see part 2. You are not going to believe, and I hope I get invited back to be on your podcast part 2 in the future. This is kind of a teaser for this thing, but in the very near future, we'll do a Grimerica podcast part 2 that talks about what it is that we release, because we have some crazy information and some actual tangible objects that we're going to show and explain tangibly exactly who the guy was and what happened.
It's fantastic. Let me ask you a question. Do you remember DB Cooper when it went down? Do you remember 1971, 11/24/1971?
Yeah, I do. I for sure do. I was 10 years old, and I read the local hometown paper. It was on the front page of the paper. It said, "Man jumps from aircraft and can't be found." And I sat on the front porch and I read that, and I asked my dad, it says this man jumped out of an airplane with some money and they can't find him. And I have a specific recollection of sitting on the porch and reading that. It was the most fascinating, intriguing story. He jumps out of an airliner and we can't find him? Like, what?
And that was, what was the date? So that was your birthday, so November 24th.
Yeah, I share the same date of birth with that, but it happened in 71. I was born in 75.
1971. And 50 years later, almost 51 years later now, it's still America's only officially unsolved hijacking in America. The FBI has not named a person who has done it. In 51 years, it's not solved.
Has anyone ever done something like it?
Yeah, there's been several other similar hijackings and similar things. This one, but they've all been solved. Everybody's, been caught or whatever. But this one's really the only one that's is left as a mystery. And that's how come you'll see it on HBO Max and Cinemax and all these things. They're still making movies and documentaries about DB Cooper.
Netflix just came out with one.
Netflix too. Yeah.
And they pointed to, a list of characters in the HBO documentary for sure. I mean, it's that same kind of crew that gets brought up. Though, Rackshaw never got brought up in this one, which I thought was fascinating. But there is one particular one specific one that did it. 4.5 months, 5 months following. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, that's the story that nobody ever heard of. After November of 71, in April of 72, somebody hijacks an airplane, does almost the exact same thing, except in this case, they asked for a different denomination. They changed a few things and they improved it. All the things that they improved in April of 72 over November of 71 were mostly things only that could have been known to the hijacker. So it leads you to believe that the two are definitely related. And that's where I got involved in this thing more than 20 years ago when this book came out written by an FBI agent called the Real McCoy. And I noticed that of all the possible suspects, and there's more than 20 suspects and more than 20 books. Each person is writing a book and claiming that their candidate was D.B. Cooper, except in the case of the McCoys. The McCoys were the only people who would not talk about it, would not admit to anything, and could not be contacted. So 20 years ago, I tried to start contacting the McCoys, and I got shut down. I can tell you, I tried everybody, emails, phone calls, personal visits, everything. I got nothing from the McCoys. McCoys ain't talking. And I thought that was unusual. Isn't that of all the people that'll talk, McCoys ain't talking.
It would indicate, not wanting to be bothered. Yeah.
Either not wanting to be bothered, or was there another ulterior motive involved here?
Yeah, well, it would seem that if there was another ulterior motive, that that would preclude them from being able to speak on. Yeah, they can't talk.
There's some guilt in there someplace. Somebody did something, and my hypothesis was that
or defense. Yeah.
My hypothesis was that maybe the McCoys, Mr. and Mrs. McCoy, were a Bonnie and Clyde, a husband and wife, and maybe she is still alive, but she's very guilty of assisting, aiding, and abetting in this thing. And she's out there free as a bird right now. Maybe she doesn't want to talk about this, and maybe she doesn't want any attention because she did specifically help on both hijackings. That's the way it started to appear to me.
How early on did you find the book?
Right after it came out. I secured a copy of it, and I got it used secondhand, but whoever had it before me had it signed by the two authors. And once I got the book, it's called The Real McCoy, that book with the pictures and illustrations and all the stuff written by the FBI agent that pretty much sealed the deal for me. The only thing left missing in the equation was how come the McCoys wouldn't talk to me. And I tried and tried and tried for years, right up until in February of 2021, I noticed an obituary. Richard Floyd McCoy III's grandmother had passed away, and I didn't know that. And I got to digging, I saw the obituary, and then I found out that his mom had also died. Now, I thought, maybe things have changed. Karen McCoy is dead, and Myrtle McCoy has died. Maybe things have changed. So I cycled through my thing, placed some more emails and phone calls. One of them was to Shantae's, which is Richard's sister, her cell number. And I leave this voicemail. And I said, "This is Dan. Again, please call me." And I waited, and the next morning, my phone rang, and I'll never forget, I picked that thing up and looked at it, and I saw the area code, and I thought, oh my God, this is Shantae. And she called me, and she said, "Yes, we know you've been trying to contact us, and we couldn't talk, but I'm willing to talk to you now, and I think my brother is willing to talk to you as well, but we couldn't talk prior to this." And that's what started the whole thing. And literally, it was less than 10 days later, I was on a jet on my way to go see Richard, spent the weekend with him, and plainly obvious, Richard Floyd McCoy, his dad was a badass dude. And I figured out everything that I had surmised from the beginning. This wasn't a hijacking. This was a love story. This guy did what he had to do because he was boxed into a box and he had no choice. And the more I got into that and understood the dynamics of the family and what the man tried to do to protect and provide for his family, now I see exactly where this thing is. So that started the whole thing, and my tiny little itty bitty fledgling YouTube channel was completely tiny. I only started a YouTube channel a little over a year ago, and I didn't know anything about video or editing, so it's all grown literally overnight. So the documentary that you're talking about got produced after the 50th anniversary last year, which was November of 2021. I came home and edited that stuff up and produced it, and it's pretty amateur, it's pretty raw, and it's pretty long.
But it's been met with good response.
Yes. Yeah. Anybody that watches the whole video pretty much unanimously says, "You got it right, Dan. You hit the nail on the head," and there's no doubt about it.
Except the community of this whole, this Cooper Con, which is formed in our culture, which is weird because DB stuck for some reason right away, and it was the wrong name. But we don't have to get into that. But so why do they not accept your hypothesis? It does seem to be sort of like the one thing that because the FBI said so, it seems like everybody's just kind of left this here.
there's an overall net effect in the fact that DB Cooper was a Robin Hood. He was a hero. He was an underdog, and he got away with it. That folklore and that mystery and that love of that character is only fueled by the fact that we don't know who he is. As soon as you solve it, most of that vaporizes. So a lot of people don't want it solved. They want, as soon as you solve it, then he didn't get away with it. They want him to get away with it. They don't really want it solved. They'd rather have it remain unknown and honored as it was for the last 50 years.
Well, those people, we're not really directing our conversation towards them. I mean, ultimately, there was a real person. He pulled off a job. He got it done. Whether he lived or not, that's obviously, people speculate around that. And there was a lot of speculation that there's no way he could have done it and lived. And yet there was a guy 5 months later who did it and lived. So to me, it seems like that is the key. That is the key to this whole thing, is that it's a job that can be done. That and who better to look at, regardless of the mystery character, than the guy who actually did it the second time, who's completely overlooked for some reason, and who has this amazing history of heroic action and call to duty, and seemingly like a grudge.
Yeah.
Seemingly a grudge.
Yeah, he was fueled by a grudge. And the character you're talking about is Richard Floyd McCoy, obviously a very decorated American hero, a war vet, Vietnam vet. He had every credential there was for fixed wing and rotary wing helicopters. He was military parachute trained. He had the jump experience. And people say that you can't jump out of a 727 and live. I've jumped out of the 727. It's not that big of a deal. He jumped at night with a round parachute, which is a little bit on the edge, but it's certainly survivable. I mean, that's not, the conditions were not anything not survivable. So Richard, right away, in my opinion, was way at the top of the list, especially considering how bad the family originally did not want to talk to me about Richard Floyd McCoy.
Well, I can say, in knowing certain people in relation to Richard Floyd McCoy, that they're, for years they've been steel traps around me as well. And it's very interesting to see how it all unfolded and how people opened up. And I just know personally that there's a loyalty and a dedication that goes inside this family. And it's, I feel like it's reminiscent of the man that we're talking about.
It is. And this family honored and protected both the mother and the grandmother at all costs. They didn't talk about it. They kept it quiet. They kept their mouths shut because they didn't want anything to happen. They all knew what the deal was and who did what, but they ain't talking until now. And that's the magic that opened up. And since then, I've become very close friends with both Richard and Shantae. I've traveled extensively with both of them. I've been to all the locations. I even went out to Portland last November and made a replica parachute jump at the same spot, carrying an approximate simulated bag of money leaving the airplane. So all that happened. And then, in the future going forward, part 2, I've got this documentary video. Even though I'm not a filmmaker, I'm a pilot. I'm not a filmmaker. This whole video, audio tech thing is not me, but I do the best I can with what I got. And I've got a part 2 that's going to show some actual video footage of some stuff that you're just not going to believe. And I hope that after that video comes out, you'll invite me back for a second podcast and we can talk through what I released in that video, because it's going to blow your mind when you see what I show in that video.
I think can we get you to say something, Rick? Whether you know what it was like to do what Dan was saying, like open up finally to this whole thing. We should just have you say something since they know you're here and you know, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously it's very personal to me. You know, it's how do you explain? I mean, you live your life and it's what you know, right?
You might ought to explain this is Richard Floyd McCoy the third talking. This is DB Cooper's son that has the microphone here. That's who's actually talking here. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah. I'm surprised we're here. I'll just say that. I've never figured out that I would ever be talking about this. I knew if we were ever going to talk about it, it would have to be after my grandmother and my mother passed. So, yeah, it's been quite a journey. I would say that Dan kind of fueled some things. As Dan alluded to earlier, I remember, through many years, I'd get phone calls, emails, stuff like that. And I remember Dan, especially emails, early 2000s. And I would just ignore him for the most part. And I was, yes, I know I did. And even I was joking with you guys earlier that, well, it wasn't even a joke, it was true. Somebody got me on the phone. They were, I guess, Hollywood, and I won't say exactly who they were with, but literally offered cocaine and hookers for me to come out and tell my story. And I even, funny enough, I was like, I'll get back to you. Not that I was interested in either one, but it was. It's been quite a, I guess, journey to get here. I guess that's where I'm going with this. And
well, I knew personally that you weren't going to talk about it unless, you know, your grandmother and mother, and there was no even visualizing that back in the past, right?
All right, yeah.
When we were there talking about it, there was no visualizing.
Yeah, we had this conversation.
Many times.
Yeah, and I literally told you I would never talk about it while my mother and grandmother were alive. It was very surreal that I lost both of them like 3 months apart. I mean, obviously, my grandmother was almost 100 and sharp as a tack, but I wouldn't have thought I would have lost my mother right after that. But it happened very quickly, and a few months after that, Dan contacted me, and here we are.
Yeah, it's been an amazing, complete turnabout of events, going from stone cold nothing all the way up to this. Now I'm living and traveling with them and talking to them. I talk to these guys on the phone almost daily sometimes. You know, this is the McCoy kids. This is DB Cooper's two children, and they know the story, and they live the story, so they know the whole thing. And I'm sitting here pinching myself, going, "I'm traveling with DB Cooper's kids." You know, totally amazing.
So can we mention that we're going to be having a deeper conversation with Rick?
Yeah, we can mention that. It'll come out after Dan's part 2. You know, we'll have an audio version coming out.
Probably like late next month or early December sort of thing. Is that what you're thinking, Dan?
I'm hoping to have my YouTube video that kind of explains what has changed recently, and there's been some huge changes occurred since June of this year. You know, the FBI has always had the stance, we're not doing anything until we see some tangible evidence. Now we have tangible evidence, and that's what's changed. And I can't tell you what it is or show it to you right now, but that's what's coming out. I think I'll have my video part 2, DB Cooper, Deep Family Secrets part 2 will probably be on the air no later than mid-November. And I'm not just going to tell it to you. I'm going to show it to you so you can make your own decision. But when you see what tangible evidence that we found and what we have, there's no more debate remaining. Richard Floyd McCoy did 2 hijackings. He did Northwest 305 and he did United 855. He did them back to back. The first one was Thanksgiving break. He was a BYU student, Brigham Young University, during his Thanksgiving break. The second one was his spring break. April of 72, he was on spring break from college. He did both of them almost identical. So it becomes...
Without missing a day of school.
Without missing a day of school.
Well, and like escape from a couple prisons too, right? Which we'll probably get into a little bit more of tomorrow.
Oh, I mean, his history is out there. You can look up, but not clear. It's still not clear, which it will be clarified, right? And there is, the Wikipedia page is not the best, could be cleaned up. There are some different things out there about him, but there's a lot out there. But here's the thing, you can make him look a certain way, but when you know the real truth about him, then he will be perceived clearly. And
right. And that was my mission from day one. I don't monetize my YouTube channel, and I don't have a book deal or a movie deal. And I've told the McCoy kids, I'm not participating in any part of a financial cut. I don't want any money. I don't want to see anything. I don't want a contract. I'm not taking any money, and you can't pay me. I want the truth to be told about who Richard Floyd McCoy was and why he did it. I want it solved. I want to show who Richard Floyd McCoy truly was. It's got nothing to do with money for me. Nothing.
And you never hurt anyone, and that's the point Brandon was bringing up, is we're going to do, several hours tomorrow with Richard Floyd McCoy III. And that's not going to come out until after the video stuff comes out. It's going to come out, a week or so, or probably that same week as the YouTube video comes out. We'll try and line it up. So that's sort of our next 2 episodes, or depending on how long we go. And then right after we get back from Egypt, because we're going to Egypt in November too, we'll have Dan back on via Zoom, and we'll wrap the whole thing, wrap a nice bow on the whole thing. So you've been on the Richard McCoy train from day one. It's just been a matter of putting the evidence together.
Really, you thought it from the very beginning, or was there? I mean, you're not trying to prove your bias. You were really looking at this thing completely initially, I'm sure, right? I mean, I think, look, he told me and things, and I was still like, nah, man, I'm not, I mean, like, I gotta look into this a little bit more to really understand it. And then when he really opened doors for me and showed me things.
Well, I can tell you, just the parachute jump itself, there's only a handful of people in the country that could have pulled that off. That's not an amateur thing. That's a gutsy thing, and it took a tremendous amount of previous jumps and skill and knowledge of aircraft, knowledge of navigation, knowledge of where to exit, knowledge of the whole thing. A very rare select handful of people who could have done that. All these other people that I saw initially, there's no way. You can't just go do this. It takes somebody with special forces, military training, and a significant background that Richard McCoy had. He had the Green Beret background. He had the requisite experience with aircraft and parachutes and parachute jumping. He had that skill set. So all I can say is it has been like a crazy long deal. My kids will tell you this DB Cooper thing has rested in our family. You say DB Cooper around my kids and they'll roll their eyes. It's like, they've been with me through the whole thing since they were little. So I am looking forward to putting this to bed once and for all. And I'm convinced, really, the testimony that I got out of Denise, who lied to the FBI in April of 72 about where the McCoy family was, because she was asked, where was the McCoy family Thanksgiving of 71, and she lied. But if you go back and listen to my documentary, I've got her on tape saying, that's not true. Richard and Karen were gone for 4 days. Thanksgiving of 71, she was the babysitter, and they were gone. And you can hear her in her own voice tell you that, which is absolutely contrary to the affidavit that she turned into the FBI at the time. She was the babysitter. Richard and Karen were AWOL from their own children, November of 71. Like, where are you going to go for Thanksgiving away from your family except to do this hijacking? So I'm looking forward to putting it away. I wish I could tell you all the details that I have in my head right now and show you some of the stuff that I have in my possession, because it's just unbelievable. But I think the best thing to do is put it on video and let you see it for yourself and make your own logical decision. My wager is that if you'll watch what I've put together, I spent 20 years building it. Just take 2 hours and watch it. And
worth it.
I think it'll be worth it for you.
No question.
If you're interested in the case and who did it, this is pretty conclusive, tangible information that I don't think can be disputed. And I think it's time we all put this to bed.
It's not Santa Claus. It's real, and it should be looked at. Yeah,
and let the McCoy kids live their lives and go on. They're not seeking a movie deal or whatever either. They just want to honor their dad and explain who their dad was. You think a hijacker is like this bad, criminal, nasty guy. Not true. Yes, it's illegal to hijack an aircraft, but he's just almost...
People are complex.
Yes. And he got pushed into this box canyon. He made a wrong decision. He probably should not have hijacked those airplanes, and I'll grant you that. Yes, it was illegal, and yes, it's a crime. But look at the crime against him. Look what America did to him as a crime against him that backed him into that corner, that forced him into that. And I'm not trying to justify hijacking an aircraft. I'm just saying...
And he didn't hurt anybody.
He didn't hurt anybody. He didn't even have the capability. Each hijacking...
It was a fake gun, right?
Didn't have anything real. There was no way to blow up an airplane or shoot anybody on either hijacking.
Can we blame TSA on him?
I'm sorry?
Can we blame TSA on him?
Let's blame TSA.
I mean, we can blame it on McCoy, can't we?
Is it your fault?
Yeah, it's his fault.
Yeah, I believe my dad was part of the reason that...
It's true. They brought in extra security into the airport.
They started using metal detectors. Yeah, that is true.
Well, I'm looking forward to part 2 with you guys, and you guys got a great podcast. I appreciate you doing what you do. Appreciate the opportunity to stop in and say hi to you guys live and in person. Totally awesome, and I'm sure we'll get part 2 jammed together here in the very near future.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I mean, we really want to thank you too for spending time with us this weekend and being so welcoming, and you too, Rick, and I mean, it's I really appreciate that. We're grateful that to be included in this whole thing. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, big
and all the work you've done
too. Yeah, Brandon, Rick.
On that, some of the motivation, I guess, is to really let people understand who my dad was. And that's the motivation. It's he was more than hijacking 1, hijacking 2. Obviously, I'm going to look at it different than anybody else. But growing up, knowing what I know, I mean, he was like my hero. I know it sounds crazy, but he was a bigger than life character for me, not just for the rest of the world. So. Now is the time for me is, to really let the world know. I mean, I've spent my whole life, everybody and a lot of people knew my dad. I mean, over explaining that he was literally one of the best humans they ever met. Give shirt off his back type of guy. I mean, 100%. Going down this journey, I've met new people. I met a few people, met somebody that served prison time with him. And literally, he said the 2 people, this is name dropping, that he thought were good humans was Jimmy Hoffa and Richard McCoy. I know that's, very interesting. But he, this guy, I don't know, hell, he's probably close to 80. and was like, my dad left an impression on him. I know that's a weird thing, but it's my whole life has been that, and it's time to really. Well,
your dad was a model prisoner, even though he broke out of prisons. I mean, what a complex character, right? He taught Sunday school.
Yeah, when he was in Vietnam, when he had R&R, and instead of the rest of the GIs go off and do whatever they're doing, he did missionary work. So I would say complex. As a prisoner, he was a model prisoner until he became the only person to ever escape from Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary. So complex would be a good way to explain him.
The number of people that I've had opportunity to interview that knew Richard Floyd McCoy, every one of them is exactly the same. They all talk about his character, what a nice person and a giving person he was. He was a gentle giant. He was strong as an ox, but he would never hurt anyone. And every one of them talked about what a dear personal friend Richard Floyd McCoy was. And I think that was actually part of his disguise. No one ever suspected Richard Floyd McCoy because he's the nicest guy on the planet, and he would give anything to help anyone at any time. Richard couldn't be the skyjacker. There's no way. And how ironic that he didn't do just one of these. He did two of them, and he never hurt anybody. And when Richard and I first talked about this, we talked about this motivation of fully explaining the complexity of who his dad was and what made him tick and why he did these. And let's get rid of this misnomer that he's an evil criminal. I disagree. I wish I could have met him. Probably one of the greatest individuals to ever walk the planet, Richard Floyd McCoy, no doubt.
Well said, Dan. Big thanks for coming on the show. I got to say, thanks for inviting us into your home, Rick, and letting us shoot your guns. And, that's that phrase that those people used to describe your dad's the exact phrase that Brandon used to describe you, give you the shirt off your back. So, you've been great to us, and we're looking forward to our longer chat tomorrow. But I guess we'll wrap it up there. We'll be back in, it'll be more like 6 weeks to wrap this thing up and put a bow on it. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
I'm walking gingerly through the rat race. Take a look at the big old smile on my face. Kicking around down by the pool of narcissists. The people are many, they preen themselves, oh how they navel gaze. Somewhere over that hill, the gloomy skies cease to exist. I'm climbing that hill, I pass by and pity the poor Sisyphus. I go into hyperdrive, turn into a beam of light. I'm strolling down aesthetic electric avenue. The people are predictable, they say good morning, how do you do? When out of nowhere, a randomly pure angel in the crosswalk bumps into me, and in doing so knocks all the evil and all the wind out of me. And it's black as tar, ugly as ever, and of no apology. This angelic mama sings heavenly of the truest theology. Together we're a seraphim dream, forever young with no chronology. 1,000 years from now we'll be written into ancient mythology. We go into hyperdrive, turn into a beam of light. Can you tell me about the view up there? It's sparkling remarkably, the air is crystal clear. Well, please won't you tell me what it takes to transcend this place? A little bit of heart and a whole lot of soul. Take a look at the big old smile on my face, as my angel says dance with me and your life will never ever ever be dull. I go into hyperdrive, turn into a beam of light. 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 Turn into a beam of light.